Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our spoiler-free review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. Our lives are the sum of our choices, and we cannot escape the past. Hey, it's Nate, and if you're joining us for the first time, we are Geekcentric, a podcast celebrating the world of movies, TV shows, toys, collectibles, gaming, and all things Geekcentric. If you are joining us for this review and maybe want to talk to us about this movie, I also want to quickly remind you that we have opened up our Discord, and we're going to open up a Discord channel for spoilers for this movie once it comes out, so you can definitely jump in using the link in our description, because we want to keep these geeky conversations going. But joining me for this geeky conversation, this spoiler-free review, is my crew of secret agents. First up, we have the judicial journeyman who's just above the law. He's Justin, the jailbreaker Lawrence.
Wow, you've made our names wrestling names yet again. It's absolutely fantastic. I
The
can't
jailbreaker?
wait to see. The jailbreaker. Like you used my first name Justin, and then Lawrence incorporated the law. It was
Right?
that's great. That's fantastic.
It works, man.
I feel like I'd come out in a robe with like a what do they call it? The thing that a gavel. You know what I mean? And I'm here to bring justice, and then I have like this weird outfit underneath my gown.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. He would honestly, the next Mission Impossible villain should be the lawman or whatever I just said, the jailbreaker. Joining alongside him for this incredibly difficult and dangerous mission, we have the conniving, covert killer, Kevin the Honey Trap Hudson.
I am the storm.
Do you know what a honey trap is, Kevin?
Kevin.
If you were to guess,
Kevin
you
the
know what
Honey
I-
Trap for sure.
Yeah, does that have something to do with bears?
Oh, well, you know what? I mean, to certain agents in the field, it could. Apparently it is the agents that are used in the field to seduce the enemy with their good looks. They're called honey traps.
Oh man, if that's my job on the team, I fully accept.
Right?
I accept this.
Dude, get you a Henry Cavill just mustache only look. Oh my goodness.
Yep. I'll just be cocking my fists everywhere I go.
Cocking something. But tapping away, doing the science stuff in the computer in the van, he's the deadly and daring Darcy, the double agent Hudson.
Well, that means I'm not on your side. I don't
No,
like
you're
that.
a double agent on the other side. You're doubling. You're on
You're
our
helping
side.
us.
So they think
Yeah,
I'm on their
exactly.
side.
You're
I'm
helping us.
you guys.
Okay.
out.
Yeah.
But you definitely
You're like the
okay.
he
ace
definitely
of the
put you
group.
as
Yeah.
the guy in the van, eh? He put
Oh yeah, I saw that coming a mile
God.
away.
He's got glasses.
Let's just say when you open those van doors, a cloud of smoke would always roll
That's
out
it.
with it.
Scooby
So.
Dooing that shit in there. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, I'm stoked to talk about this movie. This movie's been in the works for what feels like forever. But before we dive in, I want to take a quick beat just to talk about, the franchise of Mission Impossible. It's over 2.5 decades old at this point. And Justin, when you and I went to go see Fast 10, I binged every movie in that series, and I did the same thing with this one. And I realized while I was binging them that I had actually never even watched Mission Impossible 1 and 2. And 6. Somehow those were the ones I missed. I had seen 3, 4. I forgot a lot of 5. But it was so long ago that I watched 3, 4, and 5. It was and going through this experience, it's just they get more and more enjoyable as you go through them. Unlike the Fast franchise where it kind of goes up and down
It's
a
a
lot.
wave, yeah.
It's a wave,
Yeah.
right? This one does kind of consistently go
It gets
up and up
better.
and up, and it gets better. And
yeah.
I think maybe 2 is the only sort of dip down, but then, it gets better as we go along. For my other agents, I want to know, can you let our lovely listeners, what's your experience, Kevin? What's your experience been with this franchise?
I started my experience with this franchise in 1998 with the N64 video game.
Whoa.
Which was terrific. I think in terms of the story play, it rivals GoldenEye in
I was
terms
gonna
of
say.
capturing the essence of the movie.
Yeah.
Although I didn't know that at the time because I played the game well before I ever saw the movie. I think I even saw number 2 in theaters before I ever bothered renting the first one. But as a naive kid, 14, I loved 2. I hate it now, but I loved 2 at the time and went back and would rent double bills and watch both of them. And I fell in love with the series then. It really, my appreciation for the series started in 2006 with Mission Impossible 3. J.J. Abrams was the man at the time. He was doing Lost. I was loving the man, Bad Robot, everything. And he really did revitalize and start the franchise off he kind of rebooted the franchise with 3. And, the production from Bad Robot ever since has just excelled the quality of these movies over and over and over again. Ghost Protocol is maybe the most fun in the series. 5 is like the most intense and serious. 6 does a great job of blending like all of those elements that we've loved from the different movies. And so, yeah, I've been on board ever since I saw number 2 in theaters back in 2000, and this was an underrated movie for me in terms of my anticipation going into it until I did the marathon and was just like, holy shit, I can't wait for this movie. I cannot wait to be in the theater for this. It's summer blockbuster time, baby.
So good. Darcy, how about yourself?
Same thing. I mean, some of my earliest movie memories are going to see Phantom Menace, and then right up there with that in around grade 2 was going to see this for a birthday party. Mission Impossible 2 for a birthday party in grade 2, and it was
grade 2.
Again, being 7 years old, seeing those explosions and all those cool gun tricks, thought it was the coolest thing ever. And like Kevin said, looking back on it, I realized that was a steaming pile of garbage for all those reasons.
For sure.
But it's one of those series that, like Kevin said, has been around for so long, and it comes out like every 4 or 5 years. We're getting a new Mission Impossible, so I'm always going out to theaters to watch it because it is very much a theater experience for me, and it's just I'm always along for the ride and all the reveals and twists. I love them, so I was super stoked for this one too.
Dope. Justin, when your little one gets into grade 2, you gonna show her Mission Impossible 2 for the first time?
maybe. No, I actually remember seeing the first one in theater with my dad in 96, and I remember enjoying it. And yeah, 2 was a bit of a step down from that, but at the time when I saw 2, and I know Kevin can attest this, I really enjoyed it, and there was a lot of things that really worked for it. Obviously watching it now with today's eyes, you can see it's very much a blast from the past. It's a movie that is, from a specific time period, and I think the same could be said about the 1996 movie as well. They're both sort of blast from the past movies, but 2006 is where things really changed with J.J. Abrams taking over. But the first 3 movies of the franchise were very different from one another. They all had different vibes, different directors, and some people might think that's a good thing. Some people might think of that as a bad thing. At a time when trilogies and these franchises were being built, the idea of consistency and threads and narrative continuity weren't really necessarily top of mind. But after 3, I think they got themselves onto a trajectory of that when Brad Bird stepped in, and I think he injected a lot of fun that helps to modernize and move forward the franchise. And that's why 5 and 6 were so successful. They kind of used 4 as a launching pad, and they went further with it, upping the stakes. And it was very much about seeing Tom Cruise very much rise the ranks and become this superstar through this franchise. And with those 3 movies, 4, 5, and 6, probably the most consistent story that was given, with a thread that felt very consistent from movie to movie. Now here we are at 7, and we're kind of going, I think, on a new path. I think this is definitely the beginning of something new, and it's very exciting. So I've watched this franchise numerous times, very much like how I've watched Fast and Furious. Sometimes I just binge it for whatever reason, and I definitely saved it closer to the release of this movie. So I was definitely watching it with the eyes of anticipation and excitement for Dead Reckoning Part 1.
Very cool. Let's get into this movie. In Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, Ethan Hunt and his IMF team embark on their most dangerous mission yet, to track down a terrifying new weapon that threatens all of humanity before it falls into the wrong hands. With control of the future and the fate of the world at stake, and dark forces from Ethan's past closing in, a deadly race around the globe begins, confronted by a mysterious, all-powerful enemy. Ethan is forced to consider that nothing can matter more than his mission, not even the lives of those he cares about most. Directed by Christopher McQuarrie and written by Eric Jendresen, the film stars Tom Cruise, Haley Atwell, Ving Rhames, Simon Pegg, Rebecca Ferguson, Vanessa Kirby, Isai Morales, Pom Clementieff, Mariella Garriga, Shea Wingham, Greg Tarzan Davis, Charles Parnell, Frederick Schmidt, Carrie Elwes, Mark Gatiss, Indira Varma, Rob Delaney, and returning to the franchise after 27 years, Toronto, Canada's own Henry Czerny as Agent Eugene Kittredge. What a delight to see that guy. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 is only in theaters, premium large formats, and IMAX on July 12th, 2023. Special thanks, as always, to our friends at Paramount Pictures Canada for letting us watch the movie early for review. Let's get into our thoughts. I want to start off with, I think, what most people think about when they think about this franchise, and I want to talk about the action in this movie. I feel like for a lot of aspects of this film, it really does remind me of the greatest hits kind of movie of the series. You know how movies have sort of those, when they're going this long in a franchise, Fast does it a lot, a few times in their franchise, of like just showing you these sort of nostalgia plays throughout the saga, like within this one film. And I think for this one, it's a masterclass in action filmmaking. 7 movies in, and you know, the movie magic that Daddy Tom Cruise, is what I like to call him, is always going on about, and he's always talking about like the magic of the movies. This is a truest representation of that. This is a movie theater experience, and you have to see this on the biggest screen possible. We saw it in IMAX. Unfortunately, there's no aspect ratio changes, but the audio was like so wonderfully loud, and there's so many great set pieces. And the car chases are, I found, more inventive this time around.
Of course, like you said, it's to be expected. The action is a spectacle of its own when you think of Mission Impossible movies, especially over the last 3 or 4 movies. But I think what the real masterclass outside of just the action is the pacing of this movie. It fluidly moves you from action scene to action scene in such a well-paced manner that the runtime of 2 hours and 45 minutes or close to 3 hours, you don't feel it. You do not feel it.
My legs felt it a little bit.
Sure.
That might just be me. And I know, Kevin, you were mentioning that your ass was starting to feel it.
Yeah.
Oh, I got ass max seats. Yeah. Like my butt just kills in those seats after the 2 hour mark.
Right, and I it's definitely you'll feel it for sure physically, as your asses and legs will attest to. But I think from a time standpoint, I didn't once look at my watch. It didn't drag. It didn't slow down. The action with the pacing, I think that to me is really the masterclass of this movie and what Chris McQuarrie has done so well. That's what makes this such a great, enjoyable in-theater cinematic experience, on top of the spectacle of action that we see throughout this movie.
Yeah, McQuarrie's really gotten this down to a science. There's a formula here. We get a big spectacle opening. This might be the longest sort of opening before they, as I like to say, light the fuse. Yeah. This one is the most fluid in terms of moving. And what I think is remarkable is that ever since 4 in particular, ever since Ghost Protocol, you've known what the big, huge stunt that Tom's going to do is. And this one, more than ever, they showed you like the making of and everything months and months and months before we even saw it. And yet still, it's so well done that like as you're gearing up for it, you're like, oh shit, here we go. It's coming, baby. And you're like, you're getting amped up for it and excited for it. And I think that's amazing that even if they've exposed you to it so much, it's still once you get there, you're just like,
it. Yeah.
Let's go.
When you see it on that big screen, it's like breathtaking, right? Like you know.
And like the dead silence that the audience had during that moment was so cool. Everyone just held their breath like, oh. I felt like I was hanging off that building in Dubai all those years ago once again. They really did recreate that feeling.
Well, and I mentioned how at times the movie does kind of play that nostalgia card by being self-referential. You know, we'll talk about maybe a little bit of that in its narrative, but I love how it also it did that in how it's shot. Like there were times in this movies where I felt like they were bringing back various cinematographers and DPs from the other movies, because parts of this movie visually looked like Mission Impossible 1 and then 3 and then some of the more recent like 5 or 6. And I think it's such a joy to watch. And even though I was wowed by the, and I'm going to use this word, we only get to use it once on the podcast now, spectacle.
I already used it twice.
Damn it!
Yeah.
I was wowed by the incredibleness. I don't know. Spectacle is the best word of what was going on the screen. I never stopped at any time to think about where was the camera in a scene. Right? Or never once did I feel like I was watching anyone on a green screen or anything like that. Like I was just kind of fully enveloped, at least from a visual standpoint, in the movie as well, with how the action was rolling out.
I mean, again, that's one of the things you go to a Mission Impossible movie for, are these action scenes and in the way that they manage to tell a story through action, because that is what it is at its core, is storytelling. Despite being these awe-inspiring stunts that Tom Cruise is doing, they're telling a story while he's doing all these crazy things. And it's just, that's what I go to a Mission Impossible movie for. I don't care if it's the same story, whether you just replace the villain and the MacGuffin of the movie or whatever, but that's okay, because I know I'm going to sit down and enjoy this movie no matter what, because these storytelling like moments are so impactful and breathtaking.
Yeah, I think you that's a really great call out to say that the action is so indicative of the story. And I think that's another layer to how the action really works. It's, not just from a pacing standpoint, but how it informs the story and how it also drives the tension of the story. Like there are parts when, the action serves as such a thrilling, you're on the edge of your seat moment. There was a few times throughout this movie that I was definitely, you could feel the tension and how the way things are cut together, and it drives that tension. It keeps you enthralled with this story. It's all masterfully done.
And I think, it's incredible, again, that we've seen a lot of these types of action scenes in these very movies. I mean, we're on the 7th installment now, so it would seem that it'd be hard to keep things fresh, and yet, oh, look, another car chase. Holy shit, that was fun and inventive and different than car chases we've seen. And there's a final set piece. It's so well done and so... Like I was sick to my stomach with fear of heights, and it's just so well done. And I think the connective tissue, that's been here this whole time, is that Tom Cruise, even at 63, whatever he is now, is just still a bona fide action superstar. You're gonna get your Tom Cruise freaking stiff-armed runs, and he just fills that screen with so much charisma. It's amazing that he's been able to deliver this role so consistently for 7 movies. This would now tie him for the most movies with a James Bond. I think Roger Moore did 7. You know what I mean? So he's now on his 7th. He's going into his 8th action franchise movie, and he still just doesn't feel stale in that role whatsoever. And you just, it's amazing.
He's certainly, not showing his age in any way, and especially in these action moments. And I think, to me, Tom Cruise is just untouchable at this point, as far as sort of that caliber of action star. And he's flawless. I think you mentioned charisma, and I think it's very difficult to share the screen with Tom Cruise and match that charisma. But I was really, really shocked with Hayley Atwell. I mean, I shouldn't be. I love her. She's great. But I don't think I've gotten to see her in a more prominent role like this. And she's such a delightful person. To me, she kind of felt like the Rey of this franchise at this point in the franchise, right?
Yeah.
She's kind of she's super charming. She kind of feels like the vessel for the audience, joining Ethan Hunt along for this ride, being introduced to this world. And in a way, I almost feel like people, if somebody is coming into this franchise, and maybe, for me, my first movie that I watched from this franchise was 3. So if someone's coming into this movie and 7, this 7th movie is their first movie, they'll connect even more with Hayley in that way, and with her character of Grace, because she's fantastic. I really, really enjoyed her.
She was outstanding, and I think there's a couple actresses that stood out that really do, as you said, share the spotlight with Tom. But that's the beauty of what Tom's doing with these movies too, is he's giving the time for these characters. It's not just about him or about his character. It's about his character in relation to the rest of these characters, which is why there's such a drive in these movies about not just Ethan Hunt, but the surrounding characters. And I think the same can be said about this movie. Haley Atwell, outstanding. She shines so bright. She was so charming. And yeah, like exactly what you said, Nate. I thought she was very much like the gateway experience for new audience members, especially on this new journey, because this doesn't feel like it's a reboot. It's just the beginning, I feel like, of a new story after the closing of 4, 5, and 6 that had a consistent thread. Here 7 feels like a new story, and it's almost like let's introduce someone new. Shout out to Pom Klementieff. I thought she was unbelievably crazy. She's a official badass, more so than just being a mantis, but she was insanely great. I adored her. I thought she was
insane's the key word.
Yeah, no, she was insane. She was batshit crazy.
Yeah.
And that was the thing that was really great. She really leaned into the character of Paris and becomes this sort of sadistic, in your face, rage fueled assassin. And I absolutely loved it. I want to see not more of like that character, but just her being able to like really lean in. She's an outstanding actress. She's really proven it over this last year that she's gunning for some different roles.
Well, gunning indeed. I mean, definitely from her time in Guardians, and we saw in Guardians 3, and then here. I think for me though, in this movie more specifically, where in Guardians we got to hear a lot more of her, we don't get to hear too much of her. She doesn't have that many lines, but I think from a performance standpoint, that's even more impressive because she's able to bring across her performance in her physicality, in her face. The faces that she makes when she's about to do something just batshit crazy is awesome.
Or when she loses her temper.
When she loses her temper, she gets angry, she gets, upset, and I think she, it's amazing how much they got me to care about her character, given that I think she had the least amount of lines and maybe some of the lesser amount of screen time than some of these other characters in the movie.
She made what she had count.
She made her time on the screen matter for sure.
Exactly.
And I mean, you know what I think is a really striking triumph is for Henry Czerny.
I think it's pronounced Czerny.
Yeah, Czerny. Returning as Kittredge after, like you said, Nate, 27 years. And I wonder if audiences who maybe haven't seen the first one in a long time or maybe have never seen it, what their connection with that character might be. We obviously have the bias of recently rewatching all these movies, but it's amazing that all these years later, he captures the exact same smarminess, arrogance, just like you hate him when he's on screen. He's just dripping with this like hate-worthy smarm, and it's just amazing. And kudos to him for stepping back into the role and nailing it right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where even watching his character, there were moments where I was just kind of like, do I trust him? Do I not trust him?
That's the point, though.
Yeah.
I think that's the point, for sure.
Yeah.
His character is very much that. And that's the point of, I think, a variety of characters throughout this movie.
Sure.
Another one that I want to call out, who I really enjoyed, I just wish we maybe had a little more screen time with her, is Rebecca Ferguson.
Yeah,
I think
Ilsa.
she's absolutely fantastic as Ilsa. There's she's grown into the comfortability of how to perceive her emotions, like to the point that you were making, Nate, like through the idea of just understanding the person and understanding the facial reactions.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some fantastic moments where Ethan and her are very much just reading each other through eye signals, and I absolutely love that. I thought it was just, it shows the sort of commitment that both of them have to the characters that they're playing in the idea of understanding each other's looks and how to represent those looks in specific ways. But yeah, I think the only thing is I wish we just had a little bit more time with her throughout the movie, but I think she's absolutely fantastic yet again. I think these three actors are, between Haley, Pom, and Rebecca, they are like outstanding on top of Tom Cruise, in my opinion. Like they really do hold their own, and to the point of what you said, Kevin, like even though some might have more time and less time, the time that they had really did matter. It didn't necessarily take away.
And now I know I'm going to get some drawback here. It's time to tussle a little with our opinions. I will say there are two characters who are returning here and actually have less screen time than we're kind of accustomed to them having, especially over the last couple movies, and that's Ving Rhames and Simon Pegg. And I just thought these characters didn't feel as authentic to the characters we've gotten to know over the previous few movies. I just thought, I know that they are there in a lot of ways as comic relief, but not at the, it's laugh with them usually. And I found that in this movie, they were designed to be laughed at. They were goofier than we're used to being. They weren't as serious and professional. And we're dealing with world-threatening stakes here. And they were just a bit too jokey and campy for my liking. And I know that we had a brief discussion after, and there were some disagreements there.
Go ahead, Darcy.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Simon Pegg has always seemed very out of place in the Mission Impossible franchise to me, but I love his addition of the humor and stuff like that. I mean, if you think back to, what was it, 4? Is 4 when they're climbing the Burj Khalifa? And he's like, yeah, so you're just go outside. Just go. It's fine. It's fine. It's a short little trip. Like, he never takes things too seriously because he's new to the field and stuff like that. And it feels like he still is bringing that, humor and charm to this very naive, like he's very naive in his mindset going about these impossible missions. Like, oh, if I just say, Ethan, do this, he'll do it because it's Ethan. He gets things done. Yep. So that felt very true to form. But I do agree that the screen time was very subdued in this one. They didn't feel like they were there for the whole mission a lot at times. So that was disappointing.
Yeah, I think that we have to take into consideration there is a part 1 attached to this name. So, their part in the story might be smaller. But I think, you're absolutely right. Like the introduction of Simon Pegg in 2006 definitely added the humor. And I think by naturally adding Simon Pegg throughout these movies, he's naturally breaking down other characters around him to be a little bit more fun. Yeah. So Ving Rhames' character of Luther was always very serious. And I found now since Simon Pegg as Benji has been interjected, he's like kind of breaking the walls of Luther. And now Luther is being a little bit more fun and tongue-in-cheek in the role. There was always this sort of big brother or best friend mentality between Ethan and Luther. And I think we really see that come to full fruition in some of the moments with Luther and Ethan. And I think that, again, just to highlight again what you said, Kevin, even though his time was minimal, it mattered and it served a purpose. And I think they served a purpose of, injecting humor. Maybe we laughed at them a little bit more, but I don't know if that was anything more than in the past. Like I definitely laughed at them a lot in Fallout. They definitely had, those instances of like, brothers, sort of fighting each other, who's right, who's wrong, who's more skilled, but it's just playful competition. And I think we just get to see that on a new stage here. So yeah, maybe it was like they relied a little too heavily on their relationship as being, or their characters as being the comedy, but I think we'll see more of them, and I think that they'll still matter because Luther and Ethan have been in this since the beginning. Right. So
well, and I think just really quickly for Ving Rhames, and I mentioned this last night, I've found that he's gotten better and better in every aspect in each movie. And I think a lot of that does actually have to do with, Darcy, you brought it up, of Benji breaking the other characters down. But yes, so that Luther at times is more comedic, which might not work for everyone, but also that he's softer as well. And there's some really, really lovely moments between watching, like I watched 6 for the first time right before we went in to watch this one. And so getting to kind of see, like, in both of these movies, there is a really solid Luther monologue moment and speech moment where I'm just like, hell yeah. Luther,
where he's dropping some wisdom. He's wise, man.
He's
yeah,
wise.
exactly.
And so I think to that point, I think, and also I think Benji does get a very Benji scene in this movie as well. But to the point, that's it. You get that strong moment with Luther. You get one strong moment with Benji, and then they do kind of sort of go to the sidelines.
And the rest of the time, they're kind of, at least the way I was watching, they're kind of dumbed down a little bit. They're not these experts in their field, technicians that we're kind of used to. I just found this one was, after the serious tone of the last 2 movies, I was kind of saying last night, and the more I've reflected on it, I think this really was almost a soft reset of the franchise. It was like, we have completed a certain element of our storytelling in number 6, and we're moving into the next chapter. And they brought in a new writer, and it felt different than especially the last two entries, which were very serious. This just it's dumb fun, but it just felt a little dumber than I was used to with the last few installments of the franchise. And again, the more I reflect on it, I'm not sure it's as bad a thing as I initially thought leaving the theater, but it was a bit jarring. I just noticed the tonal shifts a lot with a lot of the characters.
And I mean, I think even I guess the tonal shifts within the story itself, right? And I think like kind of what you're talking about and getting into the narrative, I think for me, Kevin, as I was reflecting on it more and more, I think the way that I've sort of we've gone about so far, sort of just structuring this conversation, is kind of the structure in which I almost see the quality of this movie as well, where I think the action is at the top, followed very closely by those performances. But I do think the narrative is a little bit weaker for me as well. I think it's awesome how they somehow fell into this AI villain narrative right as AI is starting to become more and more real to us every single day. I think had this movie had come out when it was originally planned, it could have maybe felt a little more hokey, a little sort of more like unrealistic. But with everything going on with AI these days, it's scary that it does seem more realistic. And so there were parts of me that at times I was just kind of like, I don't know, this is really dense. It's kind of a little all over the place. But then other parts of me were kind of just like, well, no, it is kind of very fitting for what's going on in the world.
I just think the fact that AI and the dangers that it could potentially pose are not a new thing to science fiction or storytelling. If you look at Isaac Asimov, he's been writing about this type of stuff for years, and is kind of the godfather in artificial intelligence and what it can mean. So, to me, I thought it was really cool how they handled that and used that as the villain. I'm looking forward to seeing how that spins out, because it is, like I said, very relevant to what's going on right now, but also a very common trope that it has a lot of storytelling potential. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that, making the choice of a artificial intelligence, to your point, Nate, I think they got lucky with how much the AI boom is happening right now.
Right.
I don't know if that was planned. I don't think that was planned, especially given how delayed this movie was, given COVID and all of that stuff. And
that's what I mean, though, right? Like, it's
no,
almost
that's what
in
I mean.
their benefit.
It's in their benefit.
Yeah.
I think that they use the obscure lingo and stuff like that quite a bit to kind of mask and hide and move things around as to explain how this is all possible. But at the same time, the MacGuffin, the MacGuffin of the entire thing is so small and so minuscule in what the larger threat actually represents. So there was this interesting ballet of like something that was small and significant but controlled something that was incredibly powerful. And I thought that was really interesting. But I also think that, I think that the obscure sort of technology lingo can kind of hide a little bit of that. And people are kind of like, oh, what is he talking about? Okay, I think I kind of get this. I can see how people would probably either lose track or just understand that, like, though they're just talking a lot of like lingo just to justify this.
I mean, isn't that every Mission Impossible though?
I don't know, but like this is the first time we're really getting into something.
Recently rewatching them. A lot of the times, again, I'm going into a Mission Impossible, I'm not expecting a rock solid plot with the most thought out and well thought out narrative. It's more about telling a story through action. And the story, like the minutia of the story, like what the bad thing is never fully explained half the time. You don't know what it's going to do, or maybe it is, and it's just so far-fetched and out there that you're like, okay, whatever, it's an impossible mission, it's got to have an impossible outcome. So maybe that's what this is all relating to. But that's, to me, that didn't take away from this story, because again, I don't go to a Mission Impossible movie for these rock-solid plots.
I mean, I'm just wondering, like, I think there's a real challenge in trying to make something that you can't physically see be your main threat.
Sure.
We've had some pretty solid human villains, and a lot of the times, we can relate to the idea of a nuclear bomb being set off, and that needs to be stopped before it detonates, But now here they need to represent this idea of like information, even what this artificial intelligence is sort of looking to control is invisible, and that's a really hard thing to do. And I almost think that justifies the kind of hokey, goofy tone that a lot of the movie sort of has in response to that villain. I mean, there are certain scenes where they have to represent this artificial intelligence, and I don't know if I was like, oh, that's so menacing. That's like Philip Seymour Hoffman stealing a scene and chewing the shit out of the scenery. I was kind of like, okay, I guess so. I wasn't fully sold on the idea. I mean, and right now, artificial intelligence, it can draw pictures and it plagiarizes essays. Like, it's not. I know that the impending threat of it and what it could do is scary, but we're not really there yet. And so it's not quite the same as looking back on the devastating effects of a nuclear bomb and going, shit, that would
to
be
our
bad
robot
if it
overlords
happens.
that are listening right now. The what Kevin's saying does not represent the whole of Geekcentric. Just be aware.
Oh, come get me, you bright flashing lights. I'm so scared.
No, but I also think though that, like, in terms of villains, since Philip Seymour Hoffman, they've been kind of weak. You know what I mean? Like, to the point of
I think
what Darcy's
Lean was the
saying.
closest thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but they just serve the purpose of being the bigger threat. But
Yeah.
here, what's really interesting is that this AI concept, while relevant in today's world, it's also a mystery. You don't see it. I actually am very interested in this idea of an elusive digital enemy. I think it's actually kind of fun that they went in that direction with it, and rather than just centering it on one person. Now, there are people that are antagonists in relation to this AI, but at the same time, that mystery, that threat, that illusion of an enemy is kind of interesting. I feel that's kind of what I was intrigued with. But I do agree that they might heavy-handed with the lingo, the explanation, the exposition in general of how this thing came to be, how it manifests its material, and at the same time, because people are in this AI boom, like you said, Kevin, pictures and music and plagiarizing essays, they don't know anything beyond that. But something like this could be the inciting fear of what AI could be. Do you know what I mean? Given the fact that what it is able to achieve just on those minimal things that you've mentioned, like painting and stuff like that. So again, it still draws in a relevancy, and I think I don't think people are going to start dismantling AI after this movie, but I think people are now going to think about it.
I mean, people are already thinking about it after Ultron. Look at him.
Yeah, could you imagine though if they actually gave the AI a voice, they like a consistent voice like an Ultron throughout, would that have been more gimmicky and silly? Right?
Yeah, or if they gave it a physical body.
Right.
I mean, they do in a certain sense, right, in terms of pulling puppet strings. But I don't
smarter,
think this is the movie where you have a physical robot walking around with this in
But
its
that's its
its
goal.
mind.
You know what I
But
mean? Like, it's gonna, no, I'm just joking. I don't.
I must attain a physical
Right,
presence.
no strings
Yeah,
on
no,
me.
that's not going to work here.
Thought Kevin was an AI for a second. I think the last thing I'll just quickly say about the narrative for myself, at least, is, as I was mentioning, it's dense. They do have some callbacks to things that we've never seen, but some of the characters have always known. And that's where I did have at times a little bit of a disconnect, because as I said, there's a lot of self-referential, nostalgic stuff that they throw in, but then they also throw in flashbacks to moments where, that we've not seen, and I was left a little confused by those at moments. And
Part one.
Yes, I understand.
Yes, that's all I'm gonna say.
I totally
Yeah.
get that they could explain it in part one or in part two. I really hope we get a lot more of it explained in part two. But for the just this one movie
For part one, it
itself,
didn't matter enough. Yeah.
it didn't matter enough, and it kind of left me at times sort of going like, well, hold on, expand upon that. Like, wait, who is that? Why does that matter? And it felt a little cheap. Now, come Dead Reckoning Part 2, if I'm eating my words, awesome. I'm happy to. But at least this one, I got that a few times throughout the movie.
Yeah, that's an easy excuse to go, hey, it's only part one, but part one still needs to be self-contained enough that when they are referencing people or events and we go, oh, that's important, but we don't know why that event or person is really important, it's harder to connect. And so that it's all well and dandy when I'm sure they will wrap up a lot of those loose ends in part two. When you've got 2 hours and 40 minutes of telling us that these things are important, but not giving us the reason to believe in it and get behind it, it is a little harder to connect in that than giving us a flat out, like, this is the bad guy, look what he does, he's bad, right? This is this person might be bad, and, we might tell you why, but so there is just that sort of connection, separation that I felt as well, Nate.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I guess I didn't feel that disconnect so much because I felt like we were very much like the members of the team that don't know this history and stuff like that, because a lot of the people in the movie aren't privy to these flashbacks. It's only around 2 characters mainly, and they aren't telling anyone what's going on. So I feel like that is kind of almost the intent of this movie, is that it's setting up these mysteries that will be answered in part 2, because it is, again, a part 1. That maybe that's why I was okay coming out of it not knowing everything.
I couldn't agree more with that point. I think that the mysteries are being established because that's going to be the big carryover from part 1 to part 2. Among many things. The only other thing I want to call out about narrative, and I know we were talking about it briefly, is the super self-referential meta quality that is very relevant or very apparent in this movie. We were talking about it after the screening. This past year in Fast 10, there's a great moment where 2 characters are calling out the absurdity of the events of the Fast and Furious franchise and calling out characters as being godlike superheroes. And at moments and at different times in this movie, in Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, you get little moments sprinkled throughout where agents and different characters are calling out the absurdity of some of the past missions and what the IMF is and who Ethan Hunt is and how is he right and is he wrong. And, I really appreciated that the franchise is now taking, this step in a direction that calls back lovingly to these moments, but also draws in a comedic undertone that feels refreshingly different.
Yeah, it took Fast, 10 movies to get those moments, and here we are getting it 7 movies, and I think is maybe a more respectable amount of time to wait for that kind of joke to be sprinkled in. But let's get to our final thoughts for this movie, which we're going to be rating on a scale of 1 to 5 mysterious keys. Darcy, I'm going to have you kick us off.
Again, I've been a fan of the Mission Impossible franchise for a while. It's something I've always gone out to the theaters to watch, and no matter what, basically. And this one is no exception. It needs to be watched on the big screen because it is so awe-inspiring and breathtaking. All the action scenes and moments they string together, and the comedy. To me, I really enjoyed this one. And the fact that it felt a lot funner whilst dealing with this, very serious threat that we're still learning more about, I think was really cool. This one easily, well, it's not the best in the franchise. It is definitely up there in the top 3 or 4 because I enjoyed it so much. I'll be giving this one 4.5 out of 5 mysterious keys.
Very cool. Kevin, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm a little torn on this one just because the tonal shifts that I mentioned throughout kind of threw me off a little bit. But maybe that will resonate more with general audiences who just are looking for, they're there to see Tom or they're there to see an action flick. And if you're going just to see those things, you can't be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. The action is top-notch. They up the stakes like they always do. It's filmed in such a way that you're tense, edge of your seat. It's amazing to look at. It's incredible to witness the things that people, specifically Tom Cruise, are willing to put themselves through to make these moments happen. Tom Cruise is the savior of cinema, and he's doing it here. He's brought the best blockbuster of this summer to the big screens. Like Nate said right off the top, see this on the biggest, loudest screen you can. That's the only way to fully appreciate this. I just think there were a few elements that brought it down from some previous entries in terms of just being solid. It was more fun than it took itself seriously, and maybe it was starting to take itself too seriously. It really does depend on how you sort of approach these films and what you're really looking for in them. And so again, this is by no means a terrible movie. It's nowhere near the bottom of the list in terms of the worst entries in this franchise. But where I might give the last 3, even 4 entries like solid 4.5s out of 5, here, I'm giving this movie a very respectable 4 out of 5 mysterious keys.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I'm right along there with you. I think this movie is a bombastic summer blockbuster. As I said, like, you need to watch this in a theater. Please watch it on the biggest screen. It is a, no matter sort of when I was being taken out a little bit at times, I still found it to be a consistent smile producing movie where you're just ear to ear grinning the entire time. I think the plot, again, it could be tightened up quite a bit. The action is mesmerizing. The pacing, as you mentioned, Justin, is so good. And again, there are some set pieces in this one in particular that I will always remember. The cast is at the top of their game. I want to give a shout out as well to Lorne Balfe, the composer, and the over 555 musicians that made the music and the composition and the score for this movie. It was solid and it just fits so well. I still think Fallout is my favorite of the entire franchise. I think Fallout and 3 go back and forth for me, just because JJ is my guy with 3. But this is definitely up there in the franchise for me. I don't think it's one of the worst of the movies by any means. I think this whole franchise is just so enjoyable, and this is a really, really enjoyable movie. So I'm going to give Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, alongside with you, Kevy, a very solid 4 out of 5 mysterious keys. Justin, how about yourself?
Well, I absolutely enjoyed this movie. I think it was an absolute thrill ride. The action scenes are packed with tense, high-stake moments, and it'll keep you on the edge of your seat from start to finish. The outstanding cast delivers, and as we already mentioned, the MVPs, Haley Atwell, Pom Klementif, Rebecca Ferguson. I absolutely adored them. They shine as just badass, unforgettable characters. And, Tom Cruise, yet again, proves that he is at his best when he is himself and he is in death-defying situations. He brings his best work. So he absolutely shines as well. I think this, as we were mentioning, this movie demands to be seen in an IMAX theater. On the biggest screen imaginable. Anything less, I feel like, is a disservice to this movie for its breathtaking visuals and its just overall immersive experience. Chris McQuarrie has truly found his voice and style in the past 2 movies, elevating the franchise to new heights. I think that he's masterfully paced this movie to balance between, action and narrative pieces. And while, yes, there are some narrative flaws that I think this movie has, I would like to see what happens when we get to a part 2, because yes, this is a part 1. There are things that are kind of left on the table, things that do get resolved in this half that, won't matter in the second, but it's how it's all going to come together. So with that in mind, I remember watching Fallout and thinking very, very much the same thing about how I feel with Dead Reckoning Part 1, very well paced, really great action. Upon watching it again, my score dropped. I thought that I really started to notice some narrative things that I just didn't understand that made sense in my opinion, but still other things did matter. So for now, while I want to give this movie a 5 out of 5 just for its incredible in-theater experience, I am going to go with a 4.5 out of 5 mystery keys, because I think that this is one of the more enjoyable experiences in the theater and more enjoyable Mission Impossibles. I actually think that this is better than Fallout, in my opinion. And so, 4.5 out of 5 mystery keys. I think it's great.
Man, I hope we find the 0.5 missing key. The other half. But that is it for this spoiler-free review for Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on this movie or this franchise, well, let me just sneak into the darkness and say to Justin, fate whispers to the warrior.
A storm is coming.
And the warrior whispers back,
I am the storm. You can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com, or on Twitter @geekcentricyt, or on Instagram @wearegeekcentric. And hey, we got threads now, so you can find us on Threadin. We're threading, so you can find us there as well, which is also @wearegeekcentric.
Thread it up with us, you guys. We got all the good threads. Keep in mind, we have a ton of other episodes covering the latest and greatest shows and movies out now, including our recent spoiler-free reviews for Netflix's Nimona, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, The Flash, Wes Anderson's Asteroid City, and Disney and Pixar's Elemental. Plus, we have a ton of great interviews out now, like our most recent interview with the cast, director, and creator of Nimona. We also had some fun with the villains from Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, and we have our interview with the villain of Secret Invasion, Gravik himself, Kingsley Benadir, and the director and showrunner of that show, Ali Salim. You can check those out here on your podcast service of choice or over on YouTube at youtube.com/geekcentric. We also have our weekly watch club for Secret Invasion, where we break down each episode, with our latest episode out right now covering episode 3, where Kevin came up with just the spiciest little theory. I was very proud of his theory making in this episode. And I don't think it'll ever happen, but it would be wild if it did. So yeah, please. It's the best type of theory. Please tune in weekly every Friday for Watch Club. We've got 3 episodes left, and I can't wait to see where the series goes. The Hot Geek Summer is rolling right along, and soon we're going to have coverage of movies like Haunted Mansion, Oppenheimer, and we also have coverage for series like Foundation Season 2, The After Party Season 2, and The Bear Season 2, with even more after that. So stay tuned to find out what's next. But until then, Darcy, Kevin, Justin, thank you so much for joining me for today's spoiler-free review. And as we say, love ya.
Laters.
Get home safe, guys.
Peace.